So you're thinking about a canvas tent and you want to see what your options are, huh? Or maybe you've already got one, but you've seen another style that's got you curious and you think you're missing out on something. In this video, we are going to compare 6 different styles of canvas tents. We'll talk about the pros and cons of each so that hopefully you can figure out which style will work best for you.
Gear up and get outside.
Before you get too worked up about these specific makes and models of tents that I've got here today, note that all of them were either given to me for free to test, or they are on loan to me for a period of time, or they're being donated to a good cause. So I'm just a steward of them for the time being. This video is not about these specific models of tents. It's not a review on each type of tent. I have done reviews on almost every single one of them, so you can go watch other videos for that. Today is just about the types of canvas tents and which ones work best in different scenarios. I will put links below to these tents and any videos I may have made about them just in case you're interested. This is a bell tent. The sample model we're looking at today is the White Duck Regatta double wall bell tent. But there are many different options and models available from many different manufacturers, some made in the USA and some abroad. They're convenient because they come at a variety of price points, from a few $100s, maybe, up to several $1,000s. Bell tents have a pole in the center that provide the majority of the structure to the tent, so there's not a lot of hardware that goes with them. This one has an additional pole out towards the front for the door for convenience. They have that classic conical shape like a bell from which they get their name. That is great for shedding water, even snow, which can make this an excellent 4-season tent option. They generally have very short sidewalls. With that steep sloped roof inside, it does allow you to walk around and stand up some, but not near the edges. However, that round shape is not only pleasant to look at, but it gives you a lot of space for people to sleep and for gear. Besides that central pole, the rest of the structure generally comes from all of these guy lines. And let me tell you, there are a lot of stakes involved when it comes to bell tents. Some bell tent models come with a built-in stove jack, which allows you to put in a wood stove to heat your tent. And these are very efficient at heating because of that conical shape. Since hot air rises, it goes to the top. And when you have a very voluminous tent, especially a broad roof, it's not quite as efficient at getting that warm air to go towards the bottom of the floor of the tent where most people are sleeping and hanging out. So I really like this shape of a tent to be used as a hot tent. This particular one did not come with a stove jack, although I did put one in myself. That's one nice thing about any canvas tent, is that you can do some DIY modifications to make it your own. I did a video on how to insert your own stove jack, multiple different ways to do it, and you can go watch that one if you're interested. Bell tents are also very large and bulky when you put them away. There's so much material involved that they just can't get small. So that can make them cumbersome to transport, heavy to move around, and difficult even to get from the vehicle to where you want to pitch it. Out of all the tents I'm showing you today, this is the second largest, bulkiest, heaviest, most cumbersome tent to transport. Some pros of a bell tent are that they're relatively quick to set up. But as I noted earlier, there's a lot of staking involved, and that takes the most time. The first time you set it up, it might be a little confusing as well. If you don't get it laid out just right and get the geometry of the stakes and the guy lines just right, then your tent might be pretty cattywampus, in which case it's not going to perform like you want it to. But after a little practice, you'll get it down. Bell tents are also extremely stable in wind and inclement weather, which is a really nice feature of that conical shape. They've also got that sort of classic aesthetic and then that communal feel inside where everybody can be sitting around a central point. This also makes bell tents great for applications other than camping. I'm sure if I left this up in my backyard all the time, my kids would be playing in there with their friends every day. However, that same round shape that gives it its unique look and feel also makes it a bit less efficient for sleepers and for gear. Trying to figure out how to position 6 or 8 different people in this tent to sleep is actually pretty tricky. The only real way to do it is if everyone's sleeping on the ground like spokes on a wheel. If you're sleeping on cots or a bed inside, you're going to be raised up and you won't fit near as many people in there. That said, it makes a very comfortable and very glamorous 2-person glamping setup if you just want one bed in the center, but you still have to work around that pole. What I find is that gear and other random things are what gets shoved into the sides, and we're only actually using maybe half of the area around that central pole. You also don't have as much room to walk around inside because of that steep sloped roof. Another downside of bell tents are that they require a lot of space. This is a 13-foot diameter tent, but they get much larger than that. And you cannot pitch that in every campground, especially developed campgrounds with tent pads. You may not be able to pitch this in many places that you might be interested in going. However, if you're dispersed camping or putting it on private property that you have, that makes it much more flexible. But oftentimes, finding that large of a spot that is flat, level, and not filled with roots and bumps can be really tricky. So consider that you'll be a bit limited on this larger footprint tent. But that's going to be the case, honestly, with any large tent. I just noticed that in particular with a bell tent, because you also have to go out with all of these guy lines and stakes between 4 to 6 feet out from the tent. So you really need a spot that almost has a 25-foot diameter of soft soil that you can put a stake into in order to properly pitch a bell tent. Bell tents are ideal for family camping in large groups. Summer camps, church camps, you name it. They're also awesome for glamping, Airbnbs, vacation rentals, having an extra place to stay outside your family cabin. They'd also be a lot of fun at music festivals. And they'd make a great addition to a base camp, whether it's for sleeping quarters or a communal area. This is a Springbar style tent, and the example we're looking at is the Springbar Skyliner. A guy called Jack Kirkham in Salt Lake City, Utah was the inventor of this style tent way back in like the 50s or 60s. His patent ran out in the 90s or the early 2000s, and at that time you started seeing this style tent be adopted by many other manufacturers, including Kodiak with their popular Flexbow series, or Teton Sports and a number of others. I've reviewed a lot of this style of tent, and I love them because they are so quick and easy to set up. It uses 4 springy steel rods on the top on either end, and then a single ridge pole that runs in the middle, and that's where you get the Springbar name, because when you tension that roof, it sort of stretches that roof out, which gives you a nice, wide, broad roof inside of a fairly large tent. That gives you a lot of walk-around room, and it makes it feel very voluminous and comfortable. There are 2 poles on either end in this style tent that prop up that roof. Besides that, it's just stakes that are holding the tent to the ground. It's not a freestanding tent. You must use the stakes, but that's the case with almost any canvas tent. But I gotta say, that setup is so quick and intuitive. It's also easy for one person. This is by far the easiest tent to set up and the quickest of any style canvas tent we're looking at today. Springbar style tents have a rectangular or a square footprint. And then they also use very durable and sturdy canvas, as well as typically a waterproof PVC floor. Different variations have different amounts of windows or features. This particular one has a lot of nice airflow with big windows, and it even has a stove jack so you can use it as a hot tent with a wood stove, which is less common among this style tent. I also love that they typically have these awnings for shade or just to shed the rain off over your entryway to your tent. Another pro of Springbar tents is that they provide a good balance of portability and livability. They're very comfortable inside with plenty of space for my family of 5 in this 10-foot by 14-foot size. And that's with room to spare, even with our big old sheepdog Gertie. They're also excellent at standing up to inclement weather. You'd be amazed at how well these work in wind, rain, snow, or pretty much anything the elements are going to throw at it. I love how much comfortable standing height you have in this tent. I can walk around almost the entire floor space standing up, and I'm 6'1". Besides the wall tent that you're going to see in a minute, this style tent has the most walk around or standing room of any tent. However, some cons are that they're still relatively heavy and bulky compared especially to a synthetic cabin style camping tent, though they're certainly lighter than some of the heavier traditional canvas tents like wall tents and bell tents. While you can customize the inside a bit, you're more limited on what you can do to the canvas on the tent because that canvas provides a lot of the structure of the tent. So you're going to have to be more careful or just not cut holes into it for things like DIY stove jacks. Although I have done that successfully and it can be done. You're probably going to avoid any warranties though. In my opinion, these are excellent family camping tents. I use this tent more than any other tent when I go on family campouts. It's just comfortable for us all, it fits us all, even in the winter with a stove in there. So it's great for car camping. It can even be great for backcountry camping if you're going in on stock or horses. I was once on a backpacking trip in the high Uintas of Utah, and I saw a bunch of horsemen in with these tents, way up there where I couldn't imagine packing it in. They're also great for road trips where you might be changing campsites frequently. So if you only go to stay for a night or two, no problem. I take this all the time on overnighters or weekend trips because it is so easy and quick to set up and take down. Perhaps this style tent isn't your traditional cabin tent, but companies like Kodiak Canvas also make that more traditional cabin tent that's modular, a little more boxy, has more poles and more of a frame to it, but are also great for some folks. Those more traditional cabin tents tend to use more of an A-frame structure. I also want to mention that Springbar tents are great in the winter, so they're really a 4-season tent. Which brings me to the classic A-frame style canvas tent. The example we have today is the White Duck Rover Scout tent. These tents also have that classic timeless look and feel. You don't know if you're looking at a tent in 2025 or in 1925 or in 1825. While there are variations in the pole setup and the specific frame or structure of these tents, they often are very simple. This one only has 2 poles, one on either end. The structure of the ridge comes from a nylon webbing strap, but in some cases that might be a pole. You could also build a frame like this out of wood in the woods. They're typically a very easy setup with some basic poles as mentioned, some stakes and some guy lines. But like a bell tent, there's a lot of guying out that has to be done and tensioning of it just right, getting the geometry right so that it doesn't sag or weep in order to shed rain and snow. When doing so, you may run into issues depending on the ground that you're in. If you're in really soft ground, those stakes might come up when they're under tension, and you rely on that tension to keep the tent up. That said, they make excellent 4-season tents as well. This one also has a stove jack, and I've used it in the winter, and I've used it on hunting trips in the fall when it's been cold. It's so nice to be able to get inside a nice little comfy tent like that and have room to move around, room to have a cot and be sleeping above the ground, room for your stove and your gear. They're very pleasant tents to stay in. However, one downside is you're not going to have as much standing room or walk around room. I can only stand up straight in the center of this tent. Anywhere else, I either have to hunker down or sit down. But as you might imagine, if it was a larger size tent like this, you'd have more move around room. This style tent is typically very efficient with its space. You don't lose a lot of usable space like you might in a bell tent. You've got that rectangular footprint that makes it very efficient for sleeping, for furnishings, and for gear. Another bonus of this style tent is that they're often smaller and more lightweight than other style canvas tents. Now that can depend on the size that you get or the make and model, but this one is one of the more compact, lighter weight ones. So I could easily fit it in the back of a station wagon or a passenger vehicle. It doesn't require half of my truck bed to be able to transport it. They're relatively easy setup and tear down, but just like the bell tent, it takes a little practice to get the guy lines and stakes set up just right. And even then, it takes longer than a spring bar to set up. That classic minimalist feel appeals to a lot of campers, and it's a nice look whether you're just going camping or you're using it in some sort of glamping situation. This style tent is generally very cost effective as well. This is the least expensive of all the tents I'm showing here today, and many of these are just because there's less design that goes into them, there's less engineering to it, and there are generally fewer materials also because of its fairly simplistic design. Some cons of this style tent though are that you have limited standing room because of the steep pitch of the roof. And given that it's harder to get to the edges of the tent inside, I find that sometimes I lose gear in the corner because it's just harder to access down there. So it might not be the most efficient for all types of uses, especially with these designs that have a very short sidewall. Modifications of this might include a straight up A-frame that just has that steep pitch all the way to the ground, where you have that issue even more so. Some of those space and volume limitations make it so that it's not quite as comfortable for a large group or a family. Even if you can sleep everybody on the ground, if you're sitting up trying to play cards or standing or trying to get changed for the day, that makes it difficult to maneuver with a lot of people. But it's a great option for solo camping or couples. Not all A-frame style tents are going to be designed for 4-season use. They might not be great for the winter because they may not have the option for a wood stove, or perhaps the frame or structure isn't strong enough to shed snow or resist bad weather. On the flip side, they may not always be great for summer because they can be really hot. If you don't have a good way to ventilate, if we have one that doesn't have screen doors or side walls that open up like this one to let lots of airflow through, these could be very uncomfortable in the summer when it's hot. But when it's cold and you've got a stove in there, that A-frame, like the bell tent, is very efficient at getting that heat down to where you are. You can get very toasty in this style of tent. However, you're going to want one with some ventilation near the eaves in order to evacuate smoke when you do inevitably get some smoke inside from your wood stove. Otherwise, it can be very uncomfortable and you have to open the doors wide up to air it out and let all the cold in while you do it. This style tent is great for solo campers or couples, people who appreciate a minimalistic, simple design. Having multiple A-frame style tents can be a great option for group outings like rafting trips. or scout groups. A-frame tents make a lot of sense for people who are budget conscious but appreciate the durability and longevity of canvas. A close cousin to the classic A-frame style tent is the wall tent. This is a classic traditional design that has been around for hundreds of years as well. It does use that typical A-frame style roof, but then it has taller sidewalls that allow much more volume inside. These are generally the biggest camping tents you will find. The example we have today is a white Duck Alpha 12-foot by 14-foot wall tent. Wall tents come with substantial frames, generally made of metal, but you can also frame them up with wood poles, and some people do that, including backcountry outfitters, with down trees or wood that they find on site. A stove jack to accommodate a wood stove is typically standard on a wall tent. It's definitely expected because these are widely used in fall and winter for hunting and other four-season excursions. There are often other options to add on to a wall tent, like vestibules for outside or a nice awning. Some people will put a rain fly over top for long-term installations in order to protect the canvas from getting too wet, too much sun exposure over time, which can make the cotton in the canvas rot away. They're iconic in the West, and there are many companies that make them, including locally. Montana Canvas is one, but anytime you're in the Intermountain West, like I am from Idaho, you see these all over the place when you're out hunting in the fall. And there are local companies that make them, from very simple designs with no windows, which is not uncommon, to very complex designs with lots of windows and extra creature comforts. Typically, wall tents do not have a floor inside, but they're often options that you can add on later, or you can use simple tarps or carpet or a rug or whatever your preference may be. And many people just use a dirt floor, especially when it's fair weather. They do require a lot of staking and a lot of guy lines as well. You can just imagine that large but relatively lightweight structure would blow away easily in the wind. So be prepared to have some very sturdy stakes and a lot of good knot tying. Wall tents don't always have things like mesh doors or mesh windows for airflow and ventilation because they're often used in the cooler months. So if that's important to you or you plan on using it in 4 seasons, you'll need to consider the design and the options that you get. Some pros of wall tents are that they provide the maximum and usable space that you can get inside of a tent. That rectangular footprint is very efficient. You can walk around in almost the entire tent. The walls on this particular one are 5 feet high. So at 6'1", I can get very close to the edge, still standing up straight. But that shape and that area inside allows for plenty of room for configuring different furniture, from cots to couches to chairs to tables to wood stoves. And in some cases, for summer camps or group outings, this would make a fantastic cafeteria, mess hall, or kitchen by itself. They're best suited for long-term camping situations like extended hunting trips, or family reunions, or church camps, or research stations, or glamping rentals, or as temporary living quarters, say on your private piece of property where you're building an off-grid cabin and you need somewhere to stay while you build. Wall tents are excellent for winter camping because you have a stove to keep you warm and plenty of room inside to do everything you need to do and even entertain yourself on a long night. However, they'd be very difficult to pitch on top of snow. So you might want to get it set up early and then make sure you have a clear path to get to it when the snow falls if you're in a snowy environment. Some cons of wall tents are that they are just massive. This one weighs 200 pounds and comes in 2 huge bags that I'd rather not lift for myself. And that's on the lighter end of a wall tent because this uses aluminum poles. Most use steel poles and steel components, at least in part. And the canvas alone is huge and heavy because there's just so much of it. However, they're extremely durable because of all that, and they can withstand winter conditions and 4 seasons of weather, so it really depends on what you want. It takes longer to set these up and take these down compared to any other tent you're seeing today. It's best done with 2 people. I did manage to set this one up by myself, but I would have preferred to have some help. And because of all that size and bulk, they're difficult to transport. You pretty much have to have a truck bed to put them in, or a trailer or something. And if you've got a small pickup, they might take up most or all of your bed. They also require sturdy anchoring, and there's a lot of staking, and you don't want to go too lenient on that, or you might find yourself in a world of trouble when it gets windy. This style tent is a spin-off of an A-frame. This is a pyramid style or a hybrid type A-frame tent. So I'm going to kind of group this into a class of tents that are based off of that typical A-frame design, but they're modified to do something different or better for a specific use case. In the case of this example today, the Snowtrekker High Country Hybrid tent, it's designed to be lightweight and be excellent for camping on snow. And this is by far the best snow camping tent I've ever tried so far. They've really thought of a lot of things for that specific scenario. There are other interesting hybrid or modified A-frame style tents like the Ellis Shackleton that I hope to test out one day. Davis tents make some interesting designs. One unique characteristic of this class of canvas tent is that they are often made in the USA, and they're made by small businesses who want to do something very specific. In the case of Snowtrekker, they wanted to make this a very lightweight and portable tent, not necessarily for backpacking, but something you could easily throw in a sled and then snowshoe or cross-country ski into a place to camp, or put on the back of a snow machine. Of all the tents I'm showing you today, this is the lightest weight and the most compact. It also has a unique shape. It's not just strictly an A-frame. It has different angles in different places that are all designed to shed snow efficiently. It's got a very steep A-frame roof, and it's got a stove jack, so it's ready for a hot tent stove. And like other A-frame tents, it also heats up really quickly when it's cold outside, because all that hot air up top is forced down lower sooner compared to tents with a broader roof. Because a lot of these hybrid style tents are designed to withstand snow and winter conditions, they often have snow skirts like this one, which is essentially a shroud around the base. In the winter, on the snow, you pull that out and you put snow on top of it, which anchors your tent down instead of stakes. So there's minimal staking involved, which staking in the snow is more difficult and time consuming, and the conditions are also not very favorable to be out in the elements working with your hands to do so. Thoughtful design elements like that are what make tents like this stand apart. The sidewalls are also steep and short, so they don't turn into a kite in the wind, and so snow doesn't collapse them. That said, setting up a tent like this where you build the frame first and then pull the tent over top can be very challenging to set up in the wind. That was my experience today when I set this one up. These tents have an excellent weight to size ratio. Still very roomy inside and can sleep multiple people, but it packs down to a very reasonable size that would be easy to throw even in the back of a trunk in a sedan. So they're relatively easy to transport. The time it takes to set up is reasonable compared to other canvas tents. But given that they're optimized for snow and winter conditions specifically, they tend to shed snow and rain very efficiently. Some cons, however, are that because you have a steep roof and steep sidewalls, the room inside is a little bit less efficient for moving around and also for sleeping and your gear. There's not near as much standing room in here. I can stand up straight just in the center of the tent, which is sufficient for changing and things like that. Sort of like other A-frame style tents that aren't extremely tall, I'm not going to be able to walk around the tent. So that slightly less roomy feel and the narrower standing room makes it less convenient for groups or for kind of a communal space when you're just hanging out inside, especially compared to like a Springbar style tent, a wall tent, or a bell tent. Another downside to these tents are that because they're so specialized for winter, they may not be the best summer tent. This one in particular doesn't have any windows, and while you may get other designs with windows in them, which would help with ventilation and things like that, a tent like this is so good at trapping heat inside that it feels a little bit like a greenhouse in the summer. Right now inside there, it is extremely warm, much warmer than is comfortable to me. This tent and other tents of this variety don't have a floor as well. You can add an optional floor. However, like a wall tent, you can add an optional floor. They're just less ideal for hot weather. The ideal use cases for a hybrid A-frame tent like this really come down to winter camping and snow camping. If you're not going to be doing any of that, then this style tent probably isn't for you. If you're going to be doing some of that and also some camping in the shoulder season, spring and fall, I would absolutely take this tent. Summertime, maybe it's not ideal, but it still could be used. So it really depends on the weather where you live and where you want to camp. This particular one is called a hybrid also because it combines cotton canvas with a synthetic material, sil nylon, I believe in this case. That's in order to cut weight. Nylon has some downsides. It builds up humidity. It doesn't breathe as well, where cotton breathes very well. So there's some trade-offs there, but it's a good balance when you have both materials being used. You get a cut weight, but you still get a comfortable living environment inside. So if you're seeking a lightweight tent for a small group in wintertime or on snow, a tent like this might be an excellent option, even for extended trips. Obviously, that is not all of the styles of canvas tents. There are so many designs out there that are all cool and interesting in their own right. Like this one behind me, which is a Lavu style tent, which comes from Scandinavia. It was often used in the past by indigenous peoples where they would actually just create a frame and then use skins of reindeer and things like that in order to provide shelter and warmth in those very harsh tundra or Arctic temperatures and conditions. This particular tent that I've got behind me is from a company called Nortent. It's the GAM 8 PC for poly canvas, I believe. So it uses a hybrid canvas material which blends fibers from both cotton and synthetics like nylon or polyester. This style tent in particular is designed to withstand the most extreme conditions, including wind, snow, rain, you name it. That dome shape is very efficient for both heating up with a stove, which this is also a hot tent with a stove jack, like an A-frame that disperses heat well. I like the dome shape also because, one, it's more familiar to many of us who come from camping and just basic dome tents that we started in. Also, it's pretty efficient at using space around and also vertically where you've got plenty of room to walk around or stand up inside the tent. It's nice for that communal feel. It's nice for all 4 seasons. And this kind of a tent too is also very lightweight, which makes it easier to transport, carry, and use. All kinds of options from floors you can add in there to inner tents to stoves. This is a really fun design tent that I'm excited to try. Tent designs like this are very popular among people who like bushcraft or just getting out there in harsh conditions. And they're extremely versatile because of that. However, you're going to have some of the same limitations with space and the efficiency of how you can use the space inside because of the area around. And I've never seen such long tent poles in my life. These were extremely long, but it was actually a really fun tent to put together. So what style canvas tent did I miss that you like? Tell me in the comments, because I'm sure there are dozens more out there that would be very interesting to try or check out. What have you got your eye on? I also want to note that canvas tents have a long history in the United States. They've been used for hundreds of years, including settlers who were moving out west, fur traders, campers, hunters, troops in our early wars, all kinds of things. There's something nostalgic about a canvas tent, and I absolutely love camping in them myself. Because of that long history, we're fortunate to have many manufacturers of canvas tents in the United States of America, including Springbar, Snowtrekker, Davis Tents, Montana Canvas, Ellis, and a number of others that I'm sorry I didn't mention. If you know of some that you like, feel free to let us know in the comments as well. I'm not trying to favor any one of them. These are just the ones that come to the top of my head. There are also a lot of great quality canvas tents that are made overseas and imported, including those from White Duck and Kodiak Canvas and a number of other companies. Some pros of a USA made tent are that you often get very high quality materials and very high quality workmanship. You also know that you're supporting a small business. Most of the time they're small businesses as far as I know, but you're supporting a business close to home, and that supports our own economy. I've also noticed with these US-based manufacturers that you get excellent access to parts, service, and warranty repairs. However, some of the downsides are that you're paying a little bit more for those USA-made tents. And sometimes they have limited availability or longer wait times. But so far in my experience, that's been worth it. These imported options tend to be more affordable, which makes canvas tents accessible to more campers. They're often in stock and shipped very quickly as well. And from my experience, they offer good value to typical campers. But sometimes I've seen less consistent quality control, cheaper components, or less durable parts, especially in the plastic pieces. Customer service, warranty, or service may be less convenient or robust. But both have their place depending on your priorities and your budget, and you can still get a great tent at a wide range of price points. Whatever you do, I encourage you to shop around and select the company, the brand, and the tent based on what's important to you. Just choose intentionally. In my opinion, there's no one perfect type of canvas tent, just the right one for your needs, your preferences, and your camping style. Before you leave, I invite you to sign up for the Honey Hole email newsletter. I'll send you our top 5 outdoor gear deals that we're finding every single week. It will also enter you into a weekly gear giveaway. And I'll send you great stories about my experiences in the outdoors, as well as some tips and tricks and gear insights. Now go watch this video for more canvas tent nonsense. Then gear up and get outside.